Hello, everyone. Welcome to Prophecy Roundtable. Tonight, we are doing open mic night, and we have someone from, well, I guess the Peanut Gallery. That's you guys. We appreciate it, guys. We love having you guys out there. We really do. And we thought we'd try something different tonight where we would just kind of invite somebody that is a regular viewer and let them give us some questions. So we have Tyrell with us tonight, which I'm pretty excited about. Now, I want to remind you, read Genesis Code. It's going to be it's an amazing book, but it's going to be an amazing movie. Keep that in prayer. If you haven't listened to it, you can do that right here on YouTube. Just put in read Genesis Code and I read the whole book to you. So you can do that if you want. You can support it and go get it at Amazon as well. If you're trying to get to my website, I don't know, I got hacked like really bad. And so lots of malware and trying to get all that sorted out. So big bummer. All right, well, let's get started. I'm pretty excited about this. Hey, Tyrell, it's great to have you tonight.
Great to be here.
All right, Scott, Joel, awesome. Okay, so Scott, I believe Tyrell had a question for us. Maybe Tyrell, why don't you ask the question and we'll see what we got.
All right, well,
and feel free to comment and chime in and tell us how wrong we are.
Yeah, and where do you live?
I live in Iowa.
Oh, okay.
Where?
Yep. South Central, about an hour and 20 minutes south of Des Moines, so really close to Missouri, actually.
Oh, okay.
No, he was asking where Iowa was.
No, I'm from Minnesota. It's due south.
Yep.
Yes, okay.
Yep. All right, I guess this would be kind of like a two-part question because there's two in here, but depending on your timeline, if you're a 7-year guy, if you're a 3.5-year guy, it's obviously going to tweak a little bit. But in Daniel 12:11 and 12:12, we see two other days because normally with 3.5 years, 360 times 3.5, you get 1,260 days. And you see that multiple times. But here in the end of Daniel 12, you actually see two different numbers, which is, I'll read Daniel 11 and verses 11 and 12. It says, from the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days, so an extra 30 days. How blessed is he who keeps waiting and attains to the 1,335 days. So we keep seeing 1260, but here you get an extra 30 days and then another 45 on top of that. So what's taking place during this time?
That's awesome. Well, I'll take a stab at it if you don't mind. So
Okay.
I do believe that Jesus will come back on trumpets. All right. And so that would be, Feast of Trumpets, right? So then 10 days later, we're going to have the feast of, we're going to have the day of Yom Kippur, okay, the Day of Atonement. All right. So then another 5 days after that will take us to Sukkot. So we're 15 in there. All right. So then if you add 7 to that, let's see if I do my math right here. So that would be what, 24. Did I get that right? No, that's not right. 23. That's bad. Anyway, 23 days. That's okay. Not a math major. And then, so then we have another, 7 days roughly to get to those 30 days. So I don't know that scripture is precise about what it is, but my suggestion is that we've gone through the return of Christ. There's probably about a 10-day period where Jesus is kicking butt. He's sending out the angels to mop up and to, do all that fun stuff. We have the resurrection in and around that time. Okay, I'm not being down to the minute here. Okay, but we have it around that time. We have the resurrection. We probably have the sheep and goats judgment that's happening in that time. Not according to Joel. Well, Joel,
No, you're fine.
Okay,
I see where you're going. Yeah,
and then
that's fine.
And that might take, might take a few days.
Sure.
I don't know exactly. Again, I'm speculating. And then we get, that first feast where we're just with the Lord. I think it's gonna be amazing. So, probably I think what's happening is it's saying if you get to that then 30 days after that, man, you are blessed because you made it through the sheep and goats judgment. You're now either in as somebody who is, in their new body, or you are somebody who's still mortal, and you were a sheep instead of a goat, and you got to come in, and now you get to be part of what God has for mortals during the millennium. And then probably the 1335 days, well, so that would be what, 75 days? Is that right?
Mhm.
From when Jesus comes back, the Feast of Trumpets. Some people suggest that that could be Hanukkah. Maybe he's going to dedicate something. What would he dedicate? Maybe a temple. So it could be that we're going to have the building of Ezekiel's temple at that point. That's one way to look at it. Another one, I think, is that we have in Ezekiel 38 and 39, where it talks about Gog and Magog and that they're going to go out for 7 months. Now, the numbers don't, jive completely, which, I wish they did. It'd make life a whole lot easier. But, there is going to be a period of where people are going to go out for 7 months. They're going to be marking the bodies of the Hamon Gog, and they're going to do that. So there could be something involved with that. It could be the temple. So I can only give you a few ideas because Scripture is not specific, but I think we have enough to at least, kind of, get a sense of what might be happening at that time. So I yield the floor.
Joe.
Pat? Oh, okay, I'll go. So there's a whole lot going on. There are seals, there are trumpets, there are bowls. Doug and I have a different opinion in terms of, when they happen and things like that. Doug is more that they tend to happen on top of each other. I'm more of a guy that says the seals are opening right now. Then we go in, and there's this weird period of silence going in. And during that time frame, the two witnesses are already here, and they serve for basically 1,260 days. And then they leave at about the midpoint, and then the judgments get horrific after that. We go into the bowl judgments, and then towards the end there, you'll see the Gog Magog army amassing late in the trumpets, and then early into the bowls, they'll finally amass and walk across the Euphrates River, say, late in the bowls, and then they'll come against Israel. Israel will be out in a second exodus. They'll leave around the midpoint after the two witnesses die and resurrect, and then they'll wander around with God leading them. So whatever we're reading right now in Exodus, as we're reading our weekly parshas, it seems to be that's what's going to be happening with them during that time of Revelation 12, which is the woman carried off like eagle's wings, like the wings of an eagle into the wilderness. And he's going to, I believe that they've never heard the gospel story. So he's going to speak comforting words to them and tell them about Yeshua and tell them about himself. And it's kind of like coming out of Egypt, Then we get to the end and the Gog Magog war, and that seems to happen at the 11th hour, 59th minute of that time frame, and that's that 1260th day. And I would put that in. I'm a Yom Kippur guy. Okay. I don't know if the math works out perfectly. 75 days later to the 1335, but it seems like you're going to go through these waves of Gog Magog. It's going to be a nuclear holocaust, guys. I mean, it's described that way in Zechariah 14, and other people that are rather prophetic are saying it seems like the nuclear holocaust happens at the 11th hour, 59th minute. And that's one of the reasons why you would need the rapture then to get us out of this mess before it just absolutely burns itself out. And so then, 30 days after that holocaust, you're still alive, but there's nothing to eat. It's still horrific. Then the clouds start to dissipate, and then finally by 1335, it's livable.
I like that. I think that's not a bad idea. Maybe I'll put that in my my last book on Read Genesis. Good. That it's nuclear holocaust. Well, when you think about it from humanity's perspective, right? Jesus is the worst hostile alien you could possibly imagine. A creator God? Yeah, I don't know about that. But he is this really powerful dude. We know he's coming back. We've got to do everything. That's kind of the Samson strategy at that point. We're not going down without a fight. And if we can't beat you, then we're just going to nuke you.
Right.
Yeah, maybe you're right, Joel. I mean, I don't want to wait and find out, but maybe you're right. So that certainly could be.
If you're safe in the meantime, and then the Gog Magog war is really in the Middle East, the nukes will be going, although the nukes are going to be every place. But I can't argue for a nuke war right like today, and that's what a lot of people are saying. Oh, we're going to have a World War III tomorrow, and Trump is saying that Biden will cause it, or Biden is saying that Trump would cause it. I just don't see that, because once you have nukes going every which direction, you can't even get to a Gog Magog war. It'll be just horrific.
That's right. Yeah.
So you have
Yeah.
to set the case up where, for some odd reason, you will have wars and rumors of wars until the Gog Magog at the end. Scott.
I was going to add one more
there
thing, but go
could
ahead,
be
Scott.
a limited type of nuclear exchange in which humanity says, and if we didn't believe the Bible, that if this were to escalate and we don't get control of this, and if we don't have a one world government where we can come together, that is still how I think it plays out. Not a massive, by golly, every country starts launching nukes at everybody, but something occurs in which the world says, if we don't come together and we are not one, like Babylon, if we don't join together, it's inevitable that we will kill each other. That's pure sort of speculation, not based on any scripture. That's just always been my working theory as to the catalyst. But again, it could be a natural disaster. It could be the head puppet masters that control the money, pulling the plug on the money. There's various scenarios that the world would bend the knee, and all the nation states would come together. How it all happens, I don't know. I think it could happen quickly. I think it could happen over a period of, months, if not 6 months to a year, that causes this one world government that kicks off this final 42-month period. So, and it might happen. You guys could be correct. I don't think you are, but you might be correct about this so-called fake peace treaty, 7-year Daniel thing taken totally out of context. But, if you're right, I'm not going to kick you out of the kingdom just because, you follow Jesuits. That's okay.
Thank you, Scott. We appreciate you. We appreciate your grace.
That was a shot.
Thank you, my grace. Yeah. Yeah, I kissed the ring now. So there's one more thing I'd like to add, Tyrell, which is, and again, I have the minority opinion here, but I know I'm right, which is, I'm 100% convinced that the new heavens and earth happen at the beginning. Despite what my good friends here say, you have a world that's absolutely trashed, especially if it gets nuked. I don't want to live on it. So we're going to need something like a kind of a cleanup. And so I think the new heavens and new earth happen at the beginning of the millennium, not at the end. Okay. I just don't think that's necessary, boys. But and then the new Jerusalem is going to come down, right? So when Satan gets out after the 1,000 years, and he goes out and he gathers the people and they surround the beloved city. What city is that? That's the new Jerusalem, right? So, I think the earth gets a complete revamp. I think the new Jerusalem comes down, and probably those events are going to be happening in that time, right? So by the time the new Jerusalem comes down, maybe it coincides with Hanukkah. That would be very interesting, all right? Because also, when you look at the Ezekiel temple in Ezekiel 40 through 48, it says that there's going to be this river that's coming out from the threshold of the temple. All right. So, and that water is the water of life. It's the river of life. And it says that there will be trees on each side of it whose fruit is medicine. All right. Now, if you compare that with Revelation 22, there's a river coming out from the throne, and on either side you have the trees of life. And on either side of the river are the trees of life, whose leaves are for the healing of the nations, right? So they're exactly parallel. That's why I think these things is because when you start comparing the Old Testament with the New Testament, you start seeing the exact same things, and it just lines up. So, again, I think there's going to be this incredible time. Like, I don't think it's just instantaneous, but I think it's really accelerated growth of where the New Jerusalem comes down. The water that's coming out from under God's throne begins to then splash on the earth. And it says that anywhere the waters go, the land was healed. All right. So I don't think that it just happens, instantaneous. God snaps his fingers and poof, it's all there. I think there's a transitional period that this is happening. And so, as water flows, right, it takes time, but as it flows, it starts to heal. And it's just like, it's almost like magic, okay? Because it's God's incredible, amazing properties, where this water is now flowing out onto the earth and it's healing the earth. It's so beautiful, and so whatever, you get to 1335 days, and that seems to be a very important point. Is the whole earth healed at that point? I don't know. Is the land of Israel healed at that point? Maybe. Again, I have some question marks myself, but that's what I would kind of throw in that term.
Tyrell, what's your thoughts, opinions, understandings?
It's only a thought. It's just only a thought.
Hey, man.
I think the hard part for me is, I think especially like the pre-trib camp, they equate the tribulation with the wrath. I don't. I see in Matthew 24 where you get tribulation, then you get the cosmic signs. And if you go to Revelation 6, you see those cosmic signs. And then they're saying, hide us because this wrath is coming now. So to me, I think the wrath takes place after the tribulation. And I don't know that there's necessarily a time frame how long the wrath itself is going to be. I do know it's going to be at least 5 months, because isn't the locust going to be tormenting people for 5 months?
Fifth trumpet is a 5 month, which I believe.
Yeah.
I believe, Tyrell, it ends on Yom Teruah.
Yeah. So just my thoughts. If in Revelation 12 you see that the woman is sheltered in a place, the dragon tried to go after her, wasn't able to get her, so he goes after the rest of her offspring. If there's obviously people in hiding, once the 1,260 days of great tribulation, whatever it may be, is over with, it's going to take, depending on where they're dispersed to, I think it's going to take some time to get to Jerusalem. So I almost wonder if that's part of, depending on which verse, the second Exodus, depending on if you believe that or not. Because I just looking at different versions of Daniel 12:12, I see, blessed is he that waiteth and cometh, or he that arrives, attaineth. So I'm almost wondering if it's talking about after that many days, everybody will have been there by now, because I'm sure people will come in waves. And I don't know, some of you guys may not even believe in a second Exodus. I do, but that's just something I wondered about.
That's
Second
awesome.
Exodus.
So you see the second Exodus as taking place after the tribulation? Is that right?
I kind of do, yeah.
Okay. No, I'm
can
good
see
with
it
that. I
happening
think the second
before-
Exodus happens when the people in Jerusalem go through the mountain that's been opened, just like the Red Sea. Hello, right? And then they make their way as far as, what is it? I forget, Ayala or whatever it is. You shall make your way through my mountain valley as far as Ayala, I think it is. But anyway, wherever that is, So, yeah, interesting stuff.
I was discussing this with Sam Fisher today and another brother, and I want to have him on to talk about Gilead. It's not mentioned much in Christian or prophecy circles, but if we look back on it, Manasseh, much of the area of modern day Jordan, which people think is Edom or Moab or Ammon, the tribe of Manasseh was in Gilead. Reuben, Ephraim. In other words, and we do see in Daniel, I forget the chapter right now, but we do see that there's these areas protected, and there's a lot of things seem to be happening across the Jordan River to, I guess it would be to the west of the Dead Sea. And so I can see, again, how this might factor in that what you're talking about, Doug. In other words, they exodus out of Jerusalem. They leave town, and they're protected in the wilderness. And I don't limit it just to Judah. I believe it could be a supernatural gathering to that location. It could be supernatural protection us during the Great Tribulation to somehow make our ways there, like what Tyrell is speaking of, a second Exodus. Again, I'm not going to put it out. I do believe that the purest form of prophecy, and I'm stealing this from Halisa, are the biblical historical accounts, and the end being declared out of or from the beginning. And so I can see how his people leaving Babylon come out of her, my people, and especially during this final 3.5 years where our bank accounts are shut down. I can see a migration. How it happens, how Yah pulls it off, I don't know. Is it boats? Is it supernatural raptures like Philip was raptured, from one location to another? Is there a supernatural protection? Do the seas part? Do we get in our dinghies and start rowing? I mean, I don't know. So Tyrell, you have your hand up.
Yeah, last week for our fellowship, we were reading our Torah portion, and it mentioned an eagle. And in Daniel and Revelation, you both sing a eagle carrying them to a safe spot. I don't know what this eagle is, but it could, whatever this eagle signifies or is representative of, could that be? Because you mentioned you don't know how he's going to gather us together, how it's going to work, but do you think in any way could this be part of it? I don't think it's a literal eagle, but I don't even know what that stands for.
Lord of the Rings style?
Come on, the
That's
what I'm
eagle's
going
wings.
for.
Yeah, that would be so cool if we could get up on the back of a big old eagle like Lord of the
maybe he's
Rings.
got a bunch of eagles,
It could be
I just didn't know.
an Eagle Airlines flying them out.
Well,
I
I
think
think obviously you do see he does say that he references back in the Torah about those eagle's wings, and obviously for some that have a very hyper literal approach to Scripture, I would go, God didn't do that by becoming an eagle and Israel got on top of the wings and he started flapping and took them out of Egypt. So obviously that is symbolic. How he does it now, again, it could be. Again, not teaching this, but it could be just like Philip was taken from point A to point B. That is easy stuff for our Creator. If He wants Doug out of liberal Colorado and He wants to move him over to, he wants to transport Doug over to ancient Gilead. That is such easy stuff, and for us not to think that that's easy stuff for our Creator. We're not believing the front of the book. We're not actually believing. We're not only believing the very front of the book. We're not believing what's going on in Acts. And I think at the end of this age, it's going to be Acts on steroids. It's going to be Exodus multiplied. It's going to be greater. It's going to make the first Exodus look like child's play because it's going to be global.
It's really interesting because he does say that he's going to transport them on the wings of a great eagle, right? So in Deuteronomy, he says that he carried them as if or like on eagle's wings. And I carried you on eagle's wings. So, you definitely have a simile there or a metaphor, whatever that one is. But, in Revelation, I get the feeling that there's something a little bit more concrete about this, a little more specific and less abstract, because, he does say that on the wings of a great eagle. So that word right there would make me think that it's probably some kind of device. I think a lot of supernatural things are going to be happening during the tribulation that will not be obviously supernatural. I mean, from like if you're one of the saints who's on the receiving end of just about getting killed and you somehow stay alive, it may not be like, the writing on the wall, right? But it's still God, in his incredible grace and mercy and his superintendence and sending out, I don't know, angels or whatever, still good things are happening to people. And so I get the feeling that, they will probably get on an airplane or airplanes and fly out there. And it might be, kind of quote unquote supernatural and how it all comes together. But,
and there are people, there are wealthy Christians right now, wealthy messianics that are actually making plans. As we speak, they are making plans to get people out of America, to get people over to Africa or close to the land. So I know that from talking to them, and they're actually making plans. They're looking at it as a literal second Exodus in which airplanes will be used, boats will be used, things of that nature. And I'm not going to mock them, because they're making these preparations. Now, again, God doesn't need them if He wants to protect us supernaturally, if He wants to move us from point A to point B. But He has, whether they're right or wrong, these individuals are investing their time, money, and resources into staging areas where people can go. I mentioned Gilead earlier. There are people boots on the ground right now working and essentially, because when we start seeing it from a House of Israel standpoint, Doug, I mean, how many of those people that are in Gilead right now, in the ancient land, how many of them are actually potentially Israelites? You know, we don't know. I mean, because we can't do the DNA theology thing, but the location is very important. I believe it is. I think that might be an overlooked area in prophecy. The land which Israel occupied west of the Jordan. And it wasn't just a little minuscule little piece of plot of land. So that's all I got.
See,
go ahead, Tyrell.
Oh, well, you mentioned like coming out and people saving money to actually transport, and we don't know how this is going to work. When you read in Revelation 18:4, where it's talking about mystery Babylon, Babylon has fallen, when it says, "Come out of her, my people," do you think that's talking about a lifestyle or an actual location?
I'll take it first because I know what Doug's going to say. He thinks there's going to be a literal Babylon rebuilt. So his answer is easy. He thinks there's going to be a literal Babylon, and I guess we got to flee from that future city. I look at Babylon more as a system tracing all the way back to ancient Babylon, this false religion, et cetera, et cetera. And that's his people right now. In other words, this isn't just directed to the final 1 year of the church. It's been a consistent message. So he wants people to come out of, and I look at Babylon as all religion, whether it be Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all these religions that mix this syncretic mixture. He wants us to essentially say, do not add, do not take away. Anything you're adding to or taking away from would be Babylon. Roman Catholicism would be Exhibit A, I would put up as the poster child. But I could also, on the other side of the board, put up Orthodox Judaism. They both have, added to, taken away, and mixed a lot of truth with some Babylonian pagan practices, some additions like Christmas or Easter, or like our Orthodox Jewish individuals that add all these fences. Like, I can't have my milk and my cheese and my bread all in the same fridge. I got to have separate plates. I mean, that's the most extreme. That's the weirdest example I know of. But that's how I view Babylon. So he wants us to leave that false religious system. So, and then Doug, go ahead and tell him Babylon's going to get rebuilt.
Sure. Well, no, so mine is not actually that simple. I do think it's gonna be a literal place. I think there will be Babylon that will be rebuilt. But I also do think that, come out of her, my people. I don't think it's merely referring to the city. I think the city becomes the epitome of the system, the lifestyle of Babylon, and so Babylon, just like it used to be in the ancient days, it was the epitome, the beginning of this world system, of this lifestyle, and then it spread throughout the world. All right, so we have Babylon everywhere. Some people say it's New York City, and I'm like, yes, but I don't think it's only New York City.
Right.
Is it Rome? Sure, but it's not only Rome. Is it Hollywood?
London?
Yeah, but it's not only Hollywood. It's all these places, but I think it will culminate in an actual city in the end times, because I just don't know how you can actually destroy it, and people are weeping over this city that just fell down if there's not an actual city. So that's my take on it. So but I think God is definitely calling his people out of the Babylonian lifestyle, the Babylonian system, whatever you want to call that. So
yeah, in my view, some people might label anti-Semitic, but it's not. I believe ultimately the beast will rule from Jerusalem. Oh. And Christianity and Islam, no, stop shaking your head. Christianity and Islam have much of a perversion in Jerusalem, as does Judaism. So this is not about Judah. This is what are the three monotheistic religions?
Brother.
And where do you think everything is going to be centered around at the very, very end of this age?
But here's the deal. I gotta stop you, because the Jerusalem is called spiritual Sodom and Gomorrah. All right, it's called spiritual Egypt.
The great city.
It's never called Babylon. Okay, it's never called Babylon. that they might live like Babylon. Okay, fine. But
It's the-
and so we have this in scriptures in the book of Isaiah where it's referred to as spiritual Babylon, or it's referred to, excuse me, it's referred to as Egypt, and it's also referred to in, I think, Jeremiah, it's referred to as Sodom. Okay, so Egypt and Sodom. Those are the two things that Revelation says that it's referred to, and we have a witness of that in scripture, right? We have zero witness of Jerusalem ever being likened to the whore of Babylon. Right?
Actually, Ezekiel 23 calls Jerusalem and Samaria, not the streets, not the buildings, calls them both harlots.
Well, yes, I agree with you.
Who can be a harlot to Yah other than someone he was betrothed to? Because Babylon was never really betrothed to him.
Well,
she's always been a cheater. They were never in relationship with each other.
Okay, but we know that Egypt was also called a harlot. You had the Kadeshah, she was very much in Egypt. All right, so Ishtar, whatever you want to call her.
Yeah, but
she's called
are they called a
Kadeshah,
harlot?
but Ishtar, she was very much there in Egypt. All I'm saying is that, again, you have the qualities of Babylon. Sure, I no question about that, but never the label. All right, so to say that Jerusalem in the end times is the city that's going to be destroyed because it's actually Babylon, I strongly 100% disagree with that.
The only reason I say that is I believe that the beast that's where he will set up his rule and reign, is in Jerusalem. That's where he's going to do the abomination of desolation. That's where he's going to say, I am God. This is not happening in New York City. This is not happening in the Vatican. It's not happening in Mecca. And that's why, again, he's going to, from Daniel, that those passages that talks about those countries that the king of the north will not rule over. He will rule over the Holy Land, the beautiful land. And so I believe that that's where he's going to set up camp. And that's where the whole false religion, the one world government, will rule from. That's what the Masons want to do. That's what upper level Roman Catholicism, that's what want to do. When you start to look at the three main religions at the esoteric, upper level, secret knowledge stuff, all eyes are on Babylon, and not Babylon, Jerusalem. All eyes are on Jerusalem and what they want to do there. There's a reason why we care about Jerusalem right now, and it's certainly not because of,
So how do you get water around Jerusalem, Scott?
Pardon?
How are you going to have water? People from the seacoast are going to see Jerusalem burning.
Dude, you're talking about it smoke rising up. It's not that far inland. It's not that far inland.
All right.
It's not like it's necessarily on the coast.
Yeah. Well, for the record, I disagree.
Well, I know. And again, that's why
we'll have to wait and see. Okay.
That's why I'm throwing Christianity and Islam under the bus too, because nobody can say, "Oh, you're anti-Semitic." No, I'm looking at all three of these religions that all focus on Jerusalem.
Yeah, again, I just it really bothers me because you go back to Jeremiah 51, and he's already teed off at Babylon, and there was a Babylon when Jeremiah wrote that. Okay. And he talks there how he's going to utterly decimate Babylon. You know what's interesting about Babylon? He never decimated it. It just sort of withered away. It just kind of withered on the vine. It was very much a major metropolis when Alexander the Great conquered it. All right. And then it just kind of went to, became kind of a backdoor kind of city. When was it Caesar Hadrian, I think, conquered Babylon, the area of, that area. He went there and he's like, oh, this isn't even that impressive. But there were still a lot of Jews who were living in the area at that time. Right. So, we have to keep that in mind. So, hey,
I've added Mark in. Tyrell, still feel free to hang out with us, man.
Yep.
So I've added in Mark. He's been a guest before. He has a very unique theory, which, hey, Mark,
yeah,
your theory is going to be put to the test big time here in the next 2 or 3 months, correct?
Correct. I had the two witnesses showing up at this Passover.
Wow.
Okay. And so briefly, for anybody that missed that, give us a brief little summary. And you have a unique view, and I'm not saying you're wrong, We've talked on the phone, I believe, and had some interaction with each other. So you believe, you know, if you can, maybe in 2 or 3 minutes, give us a brief summary, and then let's have a discussion.
Okay, mine is based on the idea that Jesus declared a jubilee at the reading of Isaiah in Nazareth. Okay, and my jubilee is based on a 50 year and not a 49 year. Based on that numbers, I believe that Jesus read that in 27 AD, and 2,000 years is 2027. So the 7 year period is 2027 to 2021 was the start on the Bib one in 2021, which was 3/14/21. That so the midpoint will be at the Feast of Tabernacles this coming year. On the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, the 7th day is the 1290th day from 3/14/21, and that is the abomination of desolation. Then the return of Jesus at the Jubilee in 2027, based on those numbers.
And so you believe that we will see you believe the abomination of desolation will occur this coming Passover season, correct?
No,
No, okay.
will not occur until the Feast of Tabernacles this year.
Okay.
The problem I have everything as asynchronous, not based on the midpoint, but on the end point.
And then when do you have Yeshua returning? During Passover season or
Day of Atonement, 2027,
2027?
which is the next Jubilee, according to my calculations.
Okay. Okay. And so are you expecting anything really to happen? What are you expecting to perhaps happen here in the next 2 or 3 months?
Okay. My understanding is that the Battle of Jericho gives us the pace of the 7 years.
Okay.
Each day is a march, is representative of a year and a seal. So the 6 days of marches are the 6 seals. Okay, then the 7th day is the 7 trumpets, and then the destruction of Jericho is the wrath of God being poured out upon Jericho, which is representative of Jerusalem, which I disagree with Doug on, is that Mystery Babylon is Jerusalem.
Amen.
And the and that's also backed up in Revelation 11:7, I think.
So what are you actually looking for? Maybe this coming Passover, though, are you looking for any particular event to be the abomination?
My timing is asynchronous. I don't believe 1260 days is 42 months, or the other, and the times and half a time is not the same. I have it as years, so 1200 times and half a time is 1284 days. The 1260 days is straightforward, it's 1260 days. And then with the months, it's a little bit less, it's 1240 days, 0.3, based on the full cycle of a moon of 29.53088 days, which is an average.
But what are you looking to perhaps happen?
The 4th seal is going to occur this year sometime.
Okay. What do you think that would be? In other words, for because everybody that kind of watches this, they're all prophecy geeks too. We're all prophecy geeks.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not trying to nail you down, but even if you're theorizing or speculating, what are you believing might happen this coming Passover season?
Okay, this coming Passover season, I believe that the 2 witnesses definitely show up in Jerusalem.
Okay.
All right. A number of days later, I haven't calculated, I think it's 20 days later, the Antichrist is given authority for 42 months, but he doesn't walk into the temple until the Feast of Tabernacles on the 7th day and declare the abomination desolation.
Okay. So would my bank account get shut down sometime around April or May?
I'm not sure. It won't get shut down. It won't get, my opinion, it won't get shut down until the abomination desolation, for sure. but there could be a major worldwide banking issue or whatever it is that happens, that the American dollar, dies or whatever it is that happens, and that we are in a financial crisis. That is a good possibility.
Yeah, and I'm just basing that on because it says he's giving authority, and then no one can buy or sell without the mark for that 42-month period. And that's why, when people were trying to say that that the jabby jab was the mark, I'm like,
Correct.
I'm sorry, I'm still practicing law. People are still paying me. I'm depositing their checks. I'm running their credit cards. I'm still paying my bills. And here we are in 2024. So that's one of the things, like you just talked about, Mark, the two witnesses coming on the scene, but also that authority in which the mark gets implemented. But you think there might be a delay between this and the mark might not get implemented until the fall?
Until the fall, that is correct.
Okay.
This coming
And the
fall?
reason for that is I don't have times and half a time, 1,260 days and 42 months being the same.
Okay. And I don't either.
Okay.
So, Doug, you want to have some questions of Mr. Mark? He's been on with us before. He's a nice gentleman. So be nice.
Be nice. Be nice. Yes, yes, yes. Well, all right. I mean, I don't know. I'm incredibly skeptical that the two witnesses are going to show up this year. If I'm wrong, man, okay, there you go. But I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
back to the
you got your math, and
2,300
we'll
days.
just have to wait and see, I suppose.
Well, back to the 2,300 days, I had them starting on the Feast of Pentecost in 2021. What's interesting is that the Pope has a program called Laudato Si, and he has a 7-year plan that was issued at that time frame.
Why did you start at that date, Mark?
Counting backwards from the Feast of, from the Day of Atonement in 2027, ends up exactly 2,300 days. Well, it's actually 2,301, but the day before is 2,300 days from the Feast of Pentecost to the Jubilee in 2027.
And Mark, you're assuming our current calendar, and again, it's a good assumption, by the way. You're assuming our current calendar stays the same and it doesn't get readjusted back to a 360-day year, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So again, like Gavin, like Doug, like Gavin has worked this out within the 7-year period that starts in 2025 under our current calendar, and it ends in 2032 on Yom Kippurim. And it fits like a glove. I mean, I've tested what Gavin says. So he's, Mark, he would differ with you by about a year and a half, by the way. And then Doug Krieger also has things kicking off in 2025. He somehow gets an 8th year in here somewhere, and he has things ending up. No, I mean, and what's interesting is, and you know me, Mark, from being Facebook friends with me, I'm like Jello. You can't grab me. And I want to be Jello on this issue. I mean, I really do. I mean, there might be there's something big going on with the Copper Scroll Project right now, potentially.
Oh yeah.
And I can tell you this, that if something occurs in the next month or 2 or 3, it'll blow the doors off the prophecy community. If it's an if. So we shall see.
Mark, could we clarify one thing on the 2,300? Would you mind, please?
Sure.
Okay. So in the Hebrew text, it doesn't say days, and that's Daniel 8:23, I believe. It is 8. But it says Erev and Vavoker, which in Hebrew terminology and rabbinic terminology, that would be the Tamid offerings. These are continuous, and they are every morning and every evening. So, 9 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We do our Mincha, Mincha is afternoon, but anyway, we do our various Shacharit prayers. We do our then Mincha prayers. Then we also go into the Ma'ariv in the evening, and that would only be outside of the land. You would only have 2 the Erev and the Booker offerings in the land, and so it would be 1,150 days of 2 offerings each.
I understand that argument, but I also look at Genesis 1, and 6 times we have evening and morning as one day. Okay,
Sure.
so that I'm gonna argue that point right there. There's Genesis 1 tells us that evening and morning is one day, and I take it as one day. So it's 2,300 days, and when I did the calculation, and this is one of the first things I discovered, that from the Jubilee, based on a 2027 Jubilee date, from Jesus saying in 27 AD that was the Jubilee, then that would have been the 80th based on the 4th day in Genesis, or 4,000 years. Then 2027 would be the 6,000th year. Would be the 6,000th year, because on the Day of Atonement that day becomes the 6,000th year.
Well, and Mark, I'll say this real quick. Spoke to Steve Mutrio earlier this week, and I mean, and again, he is one that would be the first one to say he's been watching certain biblical dates, things of that nature now for several years. He's never made a call. He's been like Jello, just like me. He's really kind of excited about watching what's coming up, even on these. I'll just go ahead and say it. These pagan feast days, from when we start looking at Amos and Hosea, like Fat Tuesday coming up and Ash Wednesday, and what happens on February the 14th. So he's looking for maybe even some things to start getting shaken up here in the next few weeks. And then we got Purim. Joel, you and I talked about it earlier today, you know, sort of like we have that extra month this year.
Yep.
So again, I'm not going to be shocked. Like, I was not shocked when something happened in Israel while I was there. I expected something to happen. And that's one reason my wife was so mad at me when I got stuck over there. No, I'm not joking. She was like a hornet. You said something was going to happen, and it did, and you better get your butt home. And, you know, so she was like worried, upset, and angry at me because I went to Israel thinking something might happen. I don't know anything's going to happen major in the next 2 or 3 months. I believe it does. I believe it. I'm not saying it will. I'm not prophesying.
All right. One thing I have noticed in particular is that the UN has a major date thing occurring on September the 23rd of this year. I forgot what it's called, but that's the date I have as the 7th day of the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Abomination of Desolation. The other issue, again, I don't have the 2,300 days talks about evening and morning sacrifices, and those have not been happening. So that is an issue with my understanding of the way things are supposed to be happening in the last times. The other issue is a lot of people think the temple was built at the beginning. I had to adjust that even myself from that point. So there's some things that have had happen, especially the 7-year Laudato Si that the Pope has right now occurring at the Feast of Passover, which I have is 2,300 days before the Jubilee in 2027.
Is there anything special about what he's doing this year, Mark?
This year, I really haven't been paying that much attention to him, but he has always been involved in getting the major religions together, as he did in, what was the name of the country? I can't think of it now. Where they had the 3 buildings of the major faiths, Judaism.
Germany.
No, it wasn't Germany. It's in the Middle East.
Oh, Jerusalem?
Bahrain.
Oh.
No.
He's talking about the Abraham
but
Accords, the 3
Abraham.
buildings, the mosque, the synagogue, and the church.
Yeah, the Pope was behind that big time.
No doubt. Well, a friend of ours would say it's all King Charles, but
yeah, I have the Pope as the rider of the first horse.
Really? Why?
Huh?
Why?
Urban Baxter has Catholicism as the as that rider, and
Sure.
because of his 7-year agreement and things of that nature that happened in 2021, and per my looking at the different things that it occurring on Pentecost in 2021, that happened, and that there is a 7-year Laudato Si plan to implement. It's a environmental type plan more than it is anything else. Getting the church, the Roman Catholicism, along the ways of reducing their carbon dioxide emissions.
Well, and again, the Pope's always been sort of my favorite candidate since I was a little boy to be the false prophet, the second beast.
Right. And I agree
mean,
with
still-
that, but
still-
we never
still
are
is.
told. We never are told who is the rider of the first horse. There's a lot of speculation on that, but right now, my view is it is the Pope and the direction he's taking the church and things of that nature. And he did have a 7-year program issued at the right time, per my dissecting the in my timeline.
Well,
For the
and
last
it is
7
the
years.
first. He's the first Pope ever to have been the Black Pope, who's now the White Pope. Which I don't. I find that fascinating that he was the general of the Jesuits, the CIA, the army, essentially, of the Pope, and now he's the Pope. That's never
Correct.
happened before in the history of Catholicism. Never.
Correct.
I have a comment and a question for Mark.
Please.
Go ahead.
So you're mentioning here the spring of this year, 2024. Just doing my own calculations, and I've been wrong before. I was actually looking towards the fall of 2027 as well, 2027 or 2028, which if you go 3.5 years prior to the fall of 2027, you're landing on the spring of this year.
Correct.
And I'm a 3.5 year guy. Steve Mutria, which was mentioned, he's looking at spring of this year. You're looking at something possibly happening spring of this year. Now Steve's a 1 year guy, but even though if something was to happen in spring of this year, I still can't ignore in Daniel 9:27 that 3.5 years prior to the abomination of desolation, you see whoever he may be, confirming a covenant with many, which we don't know who the many are or what the covenant is. So 3.5 years prior to this spring would be right around the time the Abraham Accords were. Could that be what that covenant was? But if that's the case, who's this he? Was the Antichrist already on the scene at that time, or is the he somebody else?
It's a good question. I can't tell you specifically, but I do believe the Antichrist is around now. He may not know that he's the Antichrist, and it could be a number of people working in the background. But and it's you just have to be open to so many different things that are happening right now. If you don't have any type of sense of timing, it's really hard to pinpoint this down until one event and one event only, and that's the abomination of desolation. Because we all know that's the midpoint.
Well, and
I agree. That is the midpoint.
Yeah,
what do you
amen,
think it will
amen.
be? What do you think
Mark's
that
right.
will be, Mark?
Huh?
What do you specifically think? If you're not trying to pit, but in your best opinion, what is the abomination of desolation?
It's exactly what it's quoted in the Bible. It's an event where the Antichrist stands up and declares himself as God in some form of temple, whether it's a stone building or if it's a tent. I can't tell you. I can't tell you if all the ins and outs of what's going to happen, but we're all going to know it.
So you're saying from 2 Thessalonians 2.
Correct.
Okay. Do you believe it'll be like on what we would call right now the Temple Mount, irrespective of whether or not there's a temple there? Because it just says holy topos.
Correct. I don't know all the the Greek or the Hebrew. I'm not a scholar of those, so I only follow the English, and I look at different translations to try and kind of come up and see what they're doing from that standpoint. Joel and Doug are much better at that, 10
I'm
times
in the
better
Greek
than
right
me.
now, Mark.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm in the Greek right now. Yeah. So
Yeah.
continue
So
on, please.
from that standpoint, so I don't have that type of level of language background to do a dissertation on it. I did find one dissertation on the Jubilee being the reading in Luke 4:16 through 30 as being a Jubilee. And that was
Well,
by Dr. Sloan, who is president of the Houston Baptist University, which is now the Houston Christian University. They changed names.
well, and like Steve Mutra, he believes that the ark is going to be found, and when the ark is set up, I mean, it would be a controversial position. He understands this. He believes that when that is set up and they start doing the sacrifices, that would be the abomination of desolation. So, so
Well,
again,
there's a lot of things too. There's a red heifer has been found. They're getting ready to do those sacrifices, I think, coming up so that they could do it at this Passover is what I'm hearing.
or before.
Yeah, or before.
So if they end up going across the valley and doing a red heifer sacrifice, that's going to shake up a lot of people that are paying attention.
Right.
If they bring out the Ark of the Covenant, it will just be holy smokes.
Okay. According to my sources, and it's Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz, the reason why we have October 7th is because of the red heifer, that angered the other side, and they attacked based on they wanted to prevent the red heifers from being sacrificed. So, Mark, how do we get the Temple Mount to the point where you could have sacrifices? How do you get the red heifer, well, we know how it could be sacrificed on the other side on the Mount of Olives. We have the location. We have the person that owns the property. We have hopefully red heifers still. If they get a white hair, they're annulled. But anyway, how do we get the Temple Mount working in such a short period of time?
Great question. The only thing I can say is we had the tent in the 40-year wilderness, and that it could be easily done again in a short period of time. And that's the only thing I see that can happen. Because I also was of the opinion early on that the 1290 days was the difference between the temple and the abomination of desolation. That didn't happen in my time frame, so I was wrong on that interpretation. And let me make this point one too. Nobody got Daniel right when Jesus came the first time. Not a single person.
At least that we know
Well,
about.
well,
The shepherds were kind of figured it out.
Well, no, but they were revealed to it by angels. The
well,
three wise men were revealed to it, I think, by something from Daniel and the stars, which is not told us how it's done. But they said they didn't interpret it from the book of Daniel. And then all the other ones were told by the Holy Spirit, Anna and Simeon.
we would say that Yochanan the Immerser's father, Zechariah, knew about this because he was silenced, because he didn't believe it at first. So, I mean, he was there in the temple doing the Abiyah course, I think it was. And so, yeah, the angel showed up and told him. But yeah, I mean, he knew. They were anticipating. They just weren't sure
Correct.
exactly how it would work out.
I agree. I think the anticipation was high, and you can see that throughout the Gospels and everything during that time frame.
Right. Yeah.
That the people were looking for Jesus to come, and there was no doubt about that.
Right.
And I don't disagree with that a bit. Now, getting it all set up in the time frame that I have, I'm beginning to think that I probably am wrong on the timing.
I think whatever tabernacle could go up very fast. I mean, probably within a day or two. I mean, it wouldn't take long at all. They've got all the stuff made. It wouldn't. I really don't think it would take very long.
Right. And more of a question for Doug and for Joel, but I was talking to Sam Fisher today. I've really thought about this. How in the heck, without an Ark of the Covenant in the Second Temple period, was Yom Kippurim ever actually performed? You cannot perform Yom Kippurim if there's nothing to sprinkle, Joel. And again, I'm not trying to trick you, but if the ark's been hidden for this whole time,
right,
ever since, right before the Babylonian conquerization, is that a word? Right before Babylon conquered Jerusalem, and assuming the ark got out of there, because we don't have any record that Babylon took the ark with them, and it was hidden. After they came back, we know they started sacrifices even before the temple was built. We know there was a temple built, but how do you actually perform Yom Kippur without an ark?
Josephus, in his book The Wars, reports that there were 40 strings that didn't change from red to white. So we know that the strings were changing before that time, during the time of Yeshua's life, and then that they didn't after that. And so it is reported by Josephus. So I don't know how you get the strings to turn red. Maybe it's repentance.
What did the priest do? Did he just go in there and walk around like?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
because there were specific instructions as to what Aaron and the high priest was to do, and a lot of it centered around the ark and the covering and the cherubim, cherubim. And if you don't have that, did he just go in and
he just went in,
look around? And again, it's a speculative question. We don't know, but they definitely could not actually do the ceremony, the ritual. They couldn't.
But that's really the secondary part of it. The most important part was that you have to have the bull, and that's sacrificed for that high priest. Then you have to have the scapegoat, and then you also have to have the goat for the people. And so I would argue that that's the critical area, Scott, where you have the red scarlet thread, and so that's the area that doesn't change. And also, just so people can be aware of this, that is very similar to the cross, Golgotha, where you have Yeshua being more like the bull being offered in the middle, and then you have one thief turning towards him and one thief turning away, the scapegoat type thief. So it plays through these festivals, talk to each other back and forth, when.
And again, it's just a question I thought about today. Never really haven't considered it. And obviously, Yeshua ended up being not only the lamb, the Passover lamb, the goat, the high priest, the red heifer, all those things. So
Torah tells us that the Yom Kippur sacrifice is very individualistic. It's the high priest. He does 99% of the work, other than running the scapegoat out to the point of Azazel. But yeah, everything else is pretty much done by him quietly. Everybody sits around anticipating the whole day long. They're just all on pins and needles. Is the string going to turn, white, or are we condemned to our sins for another year? And obviously, after Yeshua resurrected, the string stayed red, and it was horrific for them. Yeah, Mark, what?
Just a point that not only Josephus recorded the 40 years of what is also in the Talmud.
I believe it is, but I only have the Josephus report.
Okay.
I haven't
done. It's in the Talmud. I've read it.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, there's three accounts of hostile witnesses in the Talmud where the doors would not stay shut, the lamp would not stay lit, and John, I think somebody pointed out John Haller's in chat, and you love nothing better than a hostile witness. If you're trying to show Yeshua was the Passover lamb, was the goat, was the red heifer, is the high priest, is the Messiah, you can use those texts in the Talmud and the 40-year. I don't think it's coincidence it was a 40-year period as evidence that he was and is Messiah.
If you want to go through the signs at some point in time, I have a sheet someplace on it where it lists off all the things. There's this amazing guy from about 62 AD to 66, and he's named Yeshua ben Hanan, so Grace, okay, the son of Grace, and he's running around on the ramparts every day saying, "Woe to Jerusalem, woe to Jerusalem." And then finally the Romans show up and they launch a stone at the ramparts, and he's killed. But just before he says that, just before he says that, woe to Jerusalem, like every day, and they beat him constantly till they hated his guts. But he was a prophet. Finally, then he said, "Woe to myself also," and then he was killed. Yeah, so all these signs were happening. The heavy, heavy doors, they were literally bolted down and they'd blow open by the morning. So many signs during 62 to 66.
We don't have much more time, but if any last person wants to join in, y'all been a bunch of shy people tonight. We only got Tyler and Mark to come in and join us. So
this has been awesome. We do have a couple questions in the chat. So Dominic Barnes, if I was a first century believer, I would ask what greater abomination than the rejection and murder of the Son of God to catch everyone live. Yeah, but true. But Jesus did say there's going to be this thing that's going to happen in that specific place. So, I don't know if there's any thoughts on that question. What about the 10 kings giving their power in 1 hour to the little horn? Could that be the 7-year treaty? And should we not be looking for the 10 kings first? Yeah. Well, I don't think we need to look for a 7-year treaty. I think there's going to be some kind of agreement, an agreement with Sheol and Hades, okay, or Hades and death, whatever, death and Sheol, that we see in Isaiah 28. We see this in Revelation chapter 6, and of course 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. That there will be that Satan is going to make some kind of deal with the world. Now, is it going to last 7 years? Yes, because from the time that he makes it until the time that Jesus comes back, that will be 7 years. But I don't think that he's going to, have this in the fine print. This contract is only good for 7 years. So that's where I think that Scripture is telling us what's going to happen. It's descriptive, but it's not. Well, it's predictive in that sense, but it's not necessarily descriptive. Okay, so it's predictive that it'll last 7 years, but it's not descriptive in that it's going to be a 7-year, a 7-year treaty. I just don't think that's what the Scripture demands. But yes, he will make a contract or a covenant for 7 years, because at the end of it, that's when Jesus comes back, and the contract is over when Jesus comes back. Okay. So,
I'm still waiting for a second witness that mentions anything about 7 years anywhere else in Scripture. And I'll keep waiting until Yeshua returns, because no one can actually give it to me.
Sure, they're there.
3.5 plus 3.5.
You can't give me anywhere else about a 7-year peace treaty or a covenant. You can't. It's not there.
I'll give you 7 years of bad harvest and 7 years of good harvest.
Yeah, but that's not a 7-year covenant. Sorry.
Well, I can give you the Battle of Jericho, 7 years.
No.
I'll pray for you.
That's 7 days, not 7 years. So, Mark, what I'm pointing out is I think we could already be in the final 7 years. Doug and Joel and 99% of our prophecy geek friends, and I'm including myself in that. I'm a nerd too. They're looking for a major event to happen to kick off the 7 years.
No,
I'm not saying we're in it yet. You're much more dogmatic, Mark. Okay.
Right.
I mean, your theory gets tested soon. You're like one of the first people to get tested. Okay. And I appreciate you for stepping out, brother. But what I'm saying is, I believe we could be. You might be correct. I think you might be a year too soon, or 2 or 3 years too soon. But again, we could already be in that period. That's my only point. I'd rather err on the side of being wrong about watching too early than watching for something that is never ever going to happen.
And I agree.
like I said, I agree with Scott. I'm a 3.5 year guy. I think there could be a 7 year thing, but I don't know. Like was mentioned, I don't know that even if there was a 7 years, that there's not a significant thing that's going to take place, and that we're even going to know. Even if, like, say that we'll know because there'll be the signing of a peace treaty. Well, we don't know that it's a peace treaty, and we don't even know that that's going to be public news. One thing we do know that it'll be public news is it says when you see the abomination of desolation. So that's what I'm looking for, whether that's this spring or in 10 years. We're going to see that. We may not see the start of a 7 year or whether there's a 7 year or not, but we are going to see the abomination of desolation. So that's what I look for.
I agree. The question is, when does it happen?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yep.
Montana,
No, we all
what
agree
I'd
on
like
that one.
to point out,
Yep.
Montana, I'd like to point out that the 10 kings listed in Revelation 17 are as kings. It's not necessarily kings. They don't have lands. And so I would argue it's big tech. And if you go back just a verse or so before what you're citing here, which is probably verse 11 or 12, you will see the 7, and it's a mystery. There's the 7, and the 8th comes from it. If you went back to 1990s time frame and you submitted a request for a website address, you would need to submit it to 7 kings, and then your reply would come back from 7 gods. And so I'm arguing it's big tech, because they're going to be able to shut down your ability to conduct commerce. And
Wait.
so
Websites in the 90s, you had to ask the 7 gods?
7
Where was this
kings,
again?
and then the reply
7
would
kings?
come from the 7 gods. Yes,
Who are the 7 kings again?
the people that took your request. Yeah, I'm
They
not
were
kidding.
called
That
the
is
7
literally,
kings?
they were the 7 kings, and the 7 gods replied. Yeah, that's
Okay.
that's different
I'd
than
love to see
Missler,
some I
but
want to see some receipts on that, brother.
I will do that for you. Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I want
And
to see
then
this
keep
in
in
receipts
mind
there.
that the oh goodness, prophecy watchers. So it's Gary Stearman and Mondo Gonzalez have had shows on this. They're coming over to the 10 Kings being 10 techs, big tech.
Well,
there you go.
I don't
Must
think
be
his
true.
name is Elon for by mistake.
It is
Elon.
Okay.
it is El Yon. Yes, that is his
Oh
true
my
name.
gosh.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'm just
And
saying.
the conspiracies. Right.
Well, Doug, when we watch the sun every morning, what are we looking for? What's the report coming from? I mentioned it to you a few weeks ago, and you were shocked.
Comment
did you mention?
on what Joel's saying, in particular on the. Oh shoot! I lost my train of thought.
It happens, Mark, when you get
So
older.
Joel, what was I
know I'm there for
shocked
sure.
about?
The Babylonian name of the sun watcher, the helio viewer. Now I'm blanking on the name of it. You know it. It's not
Shamash?
Nimrod. It's, oh goodness. I'm sorry, Doug. It's your term. You use it all the time.
Oh,
Ninurta.
No, it's the other one. Keep on going.
Enlil.
Enlil. Yes, we watch Enlil every morning.
We do?
Okay. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, my group of people. Yes,
You watch Enlil.
every morning for a report. Because the sun's been very active. We're going into that maximum cycle by
Okay.
2025.
Right.
So yeah, we're watching it. And I live up north, and I watch Aurora. I love Aurora. So, Mark, what was your question?
No, I lost my train of thought.
Okay. All right.
right.
Never mind.
Well, hey, we're out of time anyway, but guys, thank you, Tyrell, Mark. We really appreciate you guys coming on. This was fun. This is kind of an experiment, so thank you guys for being the guinea pigs here. We do appreciate that. Scott, Joel, of course, as always. Always fun doing this show, and we'll be back with you next week. Of course, bring your questions. We'll have more exciting guests, and hey, stay in the Word.